Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you guys for stopping by for another episode of Friday Reads, aka where I talk about all the books I read this week and plan on reading this weekend. So a book that I was able to finish this week was Charming as a Verb by Philippe. It looks like this. I like this cover. But we follow this young man named Henry Holtewanger, I think that's how you pronounce it. In his senior year, he's trying to apply to colleges and he is hoping to get accepted into Columbia University. He befriends this young lady named Corinne Troy. Yeah, I think her name is Corinne Troy. And they establish some sort of friendship. At first with her blackmailing him into allowing her to hang out with him, his friend, and introduce her to like the social scene because she feels like she needs this kind of experience to show off the teacher that is supposed to be writing a recommendation letter for her to get into Princeton. She's like, hey, I'm not as intense as you think I am, or that you said I am in the recommendation. I have a social life, I can let loose, I can chill, Eventually, feelings develop and they start a relationship. And Henry does something that really disappoints me. And it took me a really long time to understand why I was so disappointed in this situation and why I won't say liked because he's remained the same, you know what I'm saying? But it just kind of tainted my reading experience towards the end. I was just so disappointed, you know what I'm saying? And it was really hard to shake that feeling for a while. When I think about it, I'm trying to understand like why did he feel the need to do what he did? It just felt so silly. You know what I'm saying? It felt so silly, but I feel like, and it's like there's a part of me that feels like that I could see that happening, but there's a part of me that felt like it was just so extreme. You know what I'm saying? And I just couldn't come to accept it because I felt like there could have been something else. But nevertheless, it happened. The only thing that I can do is just kind of come to some sort of understanding. Henry has a lot of pressure on him. From a young age, he had to contribute financially to the family's financial stability. And he also had to deal with this hovering pressure of being admitted into Columbia University. Since his parents moved to America, I feel like this idea, right, of the American dream, I can see where a person comes into a situation hoping for the best, expecting the best because that's what's promised, and then those promises not being met. I can understand how devastating that it may feel, but I also understand the need to then try to push all those ambitions, all those aspirations into one's child and feeling like, okay, so this is how far I was able to get into the race. Here's the baton, take it, run as fast as you can, right? Get all the accolades, get all the wins, without realizing this push can add a lot of pressure on a person to the point where they become desperate. And so I understand that part, but at the same time, it just felt like it was just so unnecessary. Wait, why? Why did you do it? So in the beginning of the story, Henry feels, he comes across as really casual. He's a good student, but he's very casual, very laid back, and he allows his charm to kind of get him through things. He has that personality throughout the whole book, and in some ways it helps him, and in some ways it doesn't. But when he does the thing that he does, the moment where he decides he's going to take his life in his own hands and he's going to grab destiny by the cojones and just do what he needs to do with it, and it backfires, right? It doesn't backfire severely, but it backfires. I would think that experience will then be a learning experience, and then he becomes a little bit more serious. You know what I'm saying? Just a little bit. And I think what ultimately disappointed me in the end is when he gets into a university that will actually benefit him and his desires and his aspirations. He's supposed to write a letter, right, so that he can be considered for an internship at Nike. He doesn't do it. He's tried to write a couple of sentences, didn't like it. What Corinne says to him is what made me feel like I don't necessarily think he learned. You know, I think he's sorry, but I don't think he learned. She says, well, if you don't do it, then I'm going to have to like take over and like do it for you. Now I know it's probably like a joke, but I feel like in that moment, it just made me feel like he hasn't learned. He wasn't able to take this experience and utilize it as a learning experience. And so I think that for me, that was ultimately the disappointment there. I feel like I understand also too why he felt the need to do that. I just thought it was pretty funny because he saw his mom in her firefighter's uniform and that inspired him to do what he did. But I felt like he kind of got it all wrong because it was like his mom worked really hard. When he decided to do what he did, and he had to deal with the consequences, I think I was also really upset that it wasn't just him that had to suffer consequences. It was him, it was Corinne, it was Corinne's mother. And I think that was just so uncool. I was happy. I was content when Corinne was like, can't be with you anymore. We could be friends. I would really appreciate that. And I was okay with that. When I read the epilogue and they're back together, I was just like, I don't know. To me, like, how do you have a relationship after that? Because it's like, it's gotta be there. And there is forgiveness and moving on. But it's like, I just feel like they would have been better off as friends as opposed to them getting back together. And I know like when you're a teen, you don't really care about how the relationship affects the parent or the parent's opinion on the relationship. You don't really care. Like all you really care about is your relationship, and that's like your whole world. And if your parents are against it, not saying that her mom was, but just in general, like if a parent is against a relationship, it's like it doesn't really count. It doesn't really matter, right? All it really matters is how you feel about your partner or whatever, and that's it. But Corinne had a great relationship with her mom. For me, I was expecting her mom's pain and her mom's consequences would affect Corinne, and it wouldn't and it would outweigh her infatuation with Henry. But other than that, I enjoyed it. It was funny and it was lighthearted and it was pretty cool. And like I said before, I'm starting to really enjoy reading from guys' perspectives written by male authors. So we also have the Partner Plot by Kristina Forrest. I already listened to that via Audible. This is book 2 in the Green Sisters series. We follow the middle sister. Her name is Violet Green. She is a celebrity stylist, and she runs into her high school sweetheart. His name is Xavier. I forgot his last name, but his name is Xavier. They used to date when they were in high school, hence the high school sweetheart part. But they run into each other in Vegas. They get really drunk. They get hitched in Vegas. But the thing is, it's not technically a real marriage. Violet's being interviewed, and the interviewer asks her about a past situation she was involved in where her fiance was cheating on her with her client. And in order for her to maneuver through this topic of discussion, she tells the interviewer that she's actually married, she's moving on, and she's with the love of her life, who was her high school sweetheart or whatever the case may be. The interview gets published, and the town where she is from, where Henry currently works, they get wind of it, and the word spreads around because small towns thrive on gossip. They decide that they're going to maintain this fake marriage for the sake of not embarrassing Violet's mom, not embarrassing Xavier, but also Xavier sees that this is a good opportunity to use this fake marriage to benefit his career. He starts off as an English teacher and a assistant basketball coach, right? And then he is being offered a job to work at a university, which will give him more money. And I think this will also to appease this feeling that is kind of like hovering over him of feeling unfulfilled in his life, when he was in high school, he aspired to become a successful athlete, but he ends up getting injured. He torn his Achilles, and then he had to go back home to rehabilitate. But after the recovery, he just never took the opportunity to get back into the game. He just kind of gave up, and so he's never been able to fully get past that. He has this struggle of feeling like he could have done something more, especially when he sees someone like Violet, who had these aspirations and dreams of becoming a celebrity stylist, was able to accomplish that and become successful and very popular in her field. I loved that we get this kind of relationship, and we are then able to explore these kinds of discussions of finding a way to be content with what life gives us. Yeah, we could say that he could have done something to change the trajectory of his life, but everything, my mom loves to say this, everything happens for a reason. It's like we don't necessarily really know when, where, why, or how, but we know that that saying exists, and we know that it can come to fruition in however way it's supposed to. And so he slowly realizes and witnesses how he might not be impactful in the dream that he had, but he is impactful in real life with his students, and he's able to use these ambitions and use this drive and plant seeds in the students and help them and stir them in like the right direction. It was really nice. I really wanted him to have that moment. Oftentimes when we, or at least for me, from the books that I've read, we have male love interests and they have their thing going on. We don't necessarily really allow them the space and opportunity to have their moment, come to their own personal peace and feeling content with themselves, because it's like, how can he show up for his partner? He can't show up for himself. And I love that he was able to come to that conclusion before he could be significant in his relationship with Violet. Also, I really enjoy the discussion that Violet has with herself when it comes down to being in a field that's very demanding, and that being her first love, that being something that she put her whole life, mind, body, and soul into, and then she finds someone that can kind of anchor her. She is then forced to have to figure out how to balance her work life with her personal life. There's a moment where she has this discussion with her mom, and she feels like her mom doesn't appreciate what she does or really care about anything that she does. And her mom tells her, like, you're always gone, and if you wouldn't have been here, I would barely hear from you. Because her job is so demanding and she's always out and about and traveling and all that stuff like that, she doesn't really have moments where she can sit and like be with the people that love her and she loves them. So there is a kind of distance that she has with her family back home. And so I love that she comes to this realization on her own, and she is realizing, what are ways where I can create balance here? And no one necessarily gets robbed of anything. They are compromising, and I really appreciated that so much. And yeah, it was just once again another amazing story from Kristina Forrest, 3 stars. I genuinely thought Violet was gonna get pregnant, but I guess that was just me. Right now I'm currently listening to Somebody That I Used to Know by Dana L. Davis. I'm not really sure if I'm really into it like that. I was interested in picking up another book from her because I read The Voice in My Head from her. But so far where I'm at, we follow this young lady. I don't remember her name. Is it Dylan? I think her name is Dylan. I don't know. But we follow this young lady who is trying to get into Juilliard. Oh my gosh. But she's trying to get into Juilliard. She's a violinist, and she seems really serious about her craft. It's kind of a bit of a situation here because her parents are expecting her to apply for multiple colleges, but she decides to bet on just one, which is really interesting because that's what I did when I was in high school. I only applied to one college, and it didn't occur to me like I should do multiple I should apply for multiple colleges just in case, but I only applied for one, and thank goodness I got accepted to that one. But oh my gosh, that would have been crazy. That's a gamble. So she's kind of hoping that she gets into the college that she applied to, which Juilliard it's really hard to get into anyways. So to bank on that, that's insane. Also too, at the same time, there is this childhood friend that is, I guess he's forced to stay at her parents' place for the time being because he's going through some things right now, and his parents want him out of the public eye. They used to be friends when they were young, and then like he becomes like this mega like pop star or whatever the case may be. And so he goes off to Hollywood and he leaves her high and dry, and she's kind of like feeling salty about that. I don't know. I'll see. I'll see. At the same time, I am reading Dream Count by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. Listen to me. Listen to me, Chimamanda. Chimamanda. I cannot express how much I adore her writing. Like, I don't think you understand how much, like, when I'm sitting there and I'm reading her words, like, there are so many times where I feel like I'm gonna melt. My love for him was a thing bled dry of reason. Ugh. Love can be self-damage, if in fact it is love. Do we need another name for this state of queasy euphoria? This ardent absence of contentment? Like, what? Why is she saying this? Somewhere underneath his shrewd, cautious nature, a part of him dreamed and recognized dreaming and let others dream. About being in a relationship but never feeling at home. About being unsure and never made to feel that I could one day be less so. Oh my God, there was a description that she had, and I was just like... So she's talking about someone, right? So she was like, sometimes she brought her daughter, Binta, whose skin was like glistening blueberries. So I'm currently on page 169 of this book. I think like it's like 729 pages. So it's going to take me a while. And I was thinking to myself, do I want to, because there's some things that I really want to discuss. Like I kind of want to have my own discussion in regards to this book, how it makes me feel, and just the things that I want to try to understand. It kind of reminds me of like my want to understand Yellowface and the discussions it raises within the book. With here, I feel like for the first chapter, because we follow this character, her name is Chiamaka. We follow her perspective in the beginning. At first, we are during the time of the pandemic, and she's having this conversation with her family and just feeling alone in her apartment and not being able to have like personal physical interactions with people. The only time she's able to have conversations is via video chat on WhatsApp, or I think that's what they're using. And just that feeling of isolation, and it kind of felt a bit like horror-esque in the beginning, where you don't know like what could potentially happen, what's brewing during this time of the pandemic. This fear of like getting sick, this fear of one's safety and security during that particular time. She then reflects on her past, and I think it's because she's lonely that she starts to discuss, or she wants to explore past relationships that she has. She discusses 3 significant relationships and those ideals not being met in either of the men that she encounters, even when she thinks that they are. And it's really interesting to me because when I was trying to unpack, like, what was all of this about? Like, why wasn't she able to find someone that she could vibe with, someone that she could accept, someone that would be the one for her, right? I realized that for her, it can be difficult because she is someone who never had to want for anything. There's been plenty of times where it's been brought up that her father is a big man. That's what they call it. Someone who comes from wealth, has a lot of money. And so she doesn't necessarily really have to work. She decides that she's going to become a travel writer. She goes to all of these countries and places using her dad's money. And she writes from her perspective the places that she goes to. And some of the things based off of some of her writing, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, well, like, what are we talking about here? Like, there was a moment where she was talking about being somewhere. I forgot where she was, but it wasn't as eventful until she got some sort of drink. And what made it appealing to her was because it, like, someone uses a dirty knife to, like, mix the drinks or something like that. And I was just like, girl, what are you saying here? Like, what are we doing here? There's been plenty of times also too where there are important discussions that takes place and she's so out of touch and she's so out of place in these conversations that whenever she has input, it just doesn't land properly or at all, if anything. And I don't know, it's just, she kind of feels so uneventful. But the way Chimamanda writes, it just makes me feel for her character. I feel like it's like when you have access to anything and everything that you could possibly desire, like what could someone like that want? She wants things that she can't have. She wants the Black American, but he doesn't want her. She wants the Englishman, but he's married and he's not leaving his wife. She eventually wants Chuka when she realizes that there's someone out there that could have him. She found him boring. She found him mundane. But then when she discovered that there was a history where it involved another woman, she was just like, oh, well, he's mine though. And so therefore I like him. And then when he was able to like bring pleasure into the relationship, it's like, oh, you know, I think I could get jiggy with this. But then when it comes down to actually settling down and getting married and, you know, having children, she's just like, I don't want that. It's kind of frustrating because it's like, well, what do you want? I guess we'll explore that a little bit. And it's, her character is such a contrast to all of her other peers, her other friends that are more serious about things. And I think that it might have something to do with her upbringing and being spoiled. There's nothing wrong with not wanting to discuss anything serious, because there is a part where an agent, an editor or something like that, they liked her piece, but they wanted to change some of her topics of discussion when it came down to traveling to specific places. And Chia was like, I don't want to write about that. Why must I write about suffering? Why can't I just write about just my experience while traveling? And it's this conversation of, can someone like that, can someone as Chia, who doesn't want to reflect on the sadness, the suffering, she just wants to travel and talk about her experiences. Like, can she thrive and survive in this kind of place where everyone seems to be serious and everyone seems to want to discuss things other than that? And so I kind of pity her in that way, because it's like, I feel like some people like Chia can exist and they should exist, but it's like, is that what's demanded, right? Is that what's accepted? And so I don't know, like, it's really interesting. We do tap a little bit into the pressure of like being 40 or pushing 40 and like being forced to get married and have kids. And although that's something that she wants, it's not enough for her to just settle. Like, I think that there is something inside of her that wants something. She just doesn't necessarily really know it. There are moments where she kind of discusses, but it kind of feels a bit abstract. For her, there is this dream or this desire of just being known. She said, more than marriage, I was looking for what I then did not know as the resplendence of being truly known. She also talks about seeking immortality. She also says, I do not want what I wanted to want. She said, I wanted to love lavishly and wanted to be loved lavishly. Being in that kind of space, that kind of abyss, it feels really lonely. You know what I'm saying? And I think that can manifest itself in a lot of ways where she involves herself in relationships that reflects, right, this uncertainty, of this feeling of being unsure of oneself. And so you see the ramifications of this, like, I'm not really sure kind of like idea or feeling when she is dating all these men that they don't necessarily really want her, but they want her. It's such a sad place to be in. And so, yeah, but either way, I'm really enjoying it. It's pretty good. I'm going to go right now because I don't want to be, oh my God, it's going to be a long video. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you guys were able to enjoy yourselves. Make sure you guys have a great day, afternoon, evening, night, morning, whenever, wherever you're watching in the world. Until next time, peace.